MGTOW. Just the word itself will evoke vastly different reactions. Scorn and derision from some, pride and self-respect from others. A difficulty with MGTOW is in defining exactly what it is. The moment you define it, someone will disagree. No, married men can't be MGTOW. Yes, they can, if they live by their own rules. Some believe MGTOW's not about avoiding women, but a movement of self-reliance and a path to freedom. Personally, I don't know. I'm not going to try and define it. I'll leave that to others. My purpose here is just to put out some thoughts, make some observations, and hopefully get some feedback. Men going their own way is often described as men checking out of society, choosing not to participate in conventional relationships, or simply avoiding women. Now, some or all of that may be true, but unless you ask why that's happening, then you can't really understand the movement. The mainstream media, on the rare occasions it has touched this topic, doesn't appear to really want to understand. These men must be misogynists, bitter from failed relationships, or losers who live in their parents' basement playing computer games and watching porn all day. And that may be a convenient narrative that taps into that time-honoured tactic of male shaming. But it is neither helpful nor explanatory. So are there legitimate reasons that some men are avoiding women and putting relationships in the too hard basket? Well, perhaps the question is poorly constructed to begin with. Avoiding women implies that men are intentionally going out of their way to evade interacting with women. But is that the full story? Does the cultural zeitgeist of faux epidemics have anything to do with it? Like the epidemic of violence against women, the epidemic of rape culture on university campus, or the epidemic of sexual harassment in the workplace. Strangely, all these epidemics are occurring against the backdrop of a multi-decade sustained downtrend in violent crime. But not to worry, if you don't have enough sexual assault to constitute an epidemic, just redefine what it means, and magically you'll get more of it. Same with sexual harassment and domestic violence. Could it be, in an environment of fake outrage and hysteria over non-epidemics, that some men who would otherwise feel comfortable approaching women now choose not to? Not because they don't want to, but out of fear of being labelled as some kind of sexual predator. Or worse still, have your future destroyed, being thrown out of university, or losing your job. And if you happen to be on a university campus, you'll be told that just by being male, and thus part of the patriarchy, means you're part of the problem, that your masculinity is inherently toxic. Maybe you'll have to attend a consent class so you can learn how to control your disgusting sexual desires. And then you'll find out that even though women and men are equal, somehow women aren't responsible for themselves when you both get drunk. Now, admittedly, that's a worst-case scenario of campus life. I'm sure there are plenty of places where you can escape the morality police, and no doubt there's plenty of sexual activity on college campuses today. But there's also no doubt more risk involved, especially for men. And that brings up another point made by Dr. Helen Smith, author of Men on Strike. Her basic thesis is that men have weighed up the cost and benefits of marriage in today's climate and have concluded it's just not worth it.
I think what they're doing is they're looking at it, at the cost reward. Men look at things in terms of cost analysis. And the penalties for marriage are so high and the rewards now are so low. First of all, there's legal costs of marriage. There are so many men now who are just saying, you know what, it's just not worth it to me. I'm going to be stuck paying the alimony. I'm going to be stuck paying for child support. And it's not just legal reasons. It's also psychological ones where men feel that basically they don't really have rights in marriage. Women hold all the cards now in reproduction and all kinds of things, and men don't.
And we know the numbers. Approximately half of all marriages end in divorce. And something like 70% of those divorces are initiated by women. Men are then almost always the ones paying the alimony and child support. So why take the risk? And then we hear endlessly about the triumphs of women's achievements, the war phenomenon, as Christina Hoff Sommers calls it.
Both sexes have their graces and their own styles of being virtuous. Neither has a monopoly on good or evil. How did we lose sight of this obvious truth? Because we live in the age of WA. The rules of women are wonderful. This is a game, and it's impossible for men to win, because if women do something better than men, that's just evidence of their innate superiority. But if men outperform women, that's proof of discrimination, retrograde patriarchy, or toxic masculinity. And to violate the spirit of WA is to invite havoc. I mean, suggest, as the former president of Harvard, Larry Summers, once did, that men have some innate advantages in math or spatial reasoning. Well, prepare to change your job. But write a book that's entitled, Are Men Necessary? The End of Men, Men Down, Women Are from Venus, Men Are from Hell, and the gods of the zeitgeist smile. The answer to male supremacy is not female supremacy. The answer is equality, mutual regard, and respect. Let's try that.
Great idea. But the constant drumbeat of equality doesn't jibe with the realities of the social realm. Here, women still expect men to approach them. And then most still think men should pick up the tab on a date. What happened to equality? How about a little consistency? Well, you see, there's that little problem of biology and evolutionary psychology. So whilst there's been massive cultural shifts over the last 50 to 60 years, the biological and psychological differences between the sexes haven't kept pace. You know the drill. Men have evolved to be the provider-protector, women the nurturers. But guess what? Women don't need no man no more. They can earn their own money. Or they can find a quasi-provider via the government purse. A government purse funded primarily by male taxpayers. As Peter Lloyd notes in his book, Stand By Your Manhood, that for every £1 spent on men's health in the UK, £8 was spent on women's health, whilst men pay more than 70% of UK taxes. Well, how about here in Australia, where the Australian National Medical Research Council found that men's health problems were allocated a quarter of the funding women's research gets, despite the fact that men live 4.5 years less than women and are 60% more likely to die from cancer. And let's not forget about the Affordable Care Act in the United States, which has 134 references to women's health, but just 2 for men, and an entire chapter devoted to breast cancer. Yet prostate cancer isn't even mentioned. So how did the patriarchy manage this colossal failure to look after its own interests? Well, you may be thinking, it's time to bring out the big guns. Gynocentrism, the demonstrable reality that our society, through our governmental institutions and courts of law, puts the interests of women ahead of those of men. But can we blame this state of affairs exclusively on women's interests? Or even the feminists that purport to represent them? After all, men have been and continue to make up the majority of lawmakers. Men are complicit. But my mission here is not to delve into the origins of gynocentrism, nor do I want to turn this into a pity party for men. There's enough victim culture to go round already. My point here is that I get it. I totally understand the MGTOW choice. But, and you knew there was going to be a but, I want to make a few observations. As mentioned earlier, looking at the cost-benefit equation of marriage doesn't really stack up favourably. You may even come to a similar conclusion about regular relationships. But at the risk of stating the obvious, life is full of risks. And this is especially directed toward the 20% of my subs that are under the age of 25. No doubt you're already aware there are risks associated with just putting yourself out there in the first place. Letting a woman know you're interested carries with it the risk of being rejected. Being in a relationship carries the risk of being hurt emotionally. But that's life. It's not realistic or healthy to insulate yourself from all risks. I believe in Nassim Nicholas Taleb's idea of anti-fragility. That is, in the same way that exposing your muscles to stress makes them stronger, and protecting them from stress makes them weaker, your character and your ability to deal with adversity will be strengthened by facing it, not by hiding from it. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, I'm not afraid, I'm just not interested. I'd rather spend time doing other things. And to that I say, go for it. Working on yourself, figuring out what's important to you and your life should be at the top of your list, particularly if you're young. Not everybody needs to be in or is ready for a relationship. Not everybody needs to get married and have kids. But some people do want to get married and raise families. And all I can say to them is work on yourself. Know what your values are, what you will and won't compromise on, and choose someone that shares the same values that you do. And for those of you who are accused of being angry or bitter at women because of past experiences, if those accusations are warranted, then own it. There are plenty of valid reasons to be angry. There's no shame in it. I say immerse yourself in your anger. Get to the bottom of it. And when you do, channel it in a productive way. It's okay to be angry, but it's not healthy to stay angry. Now, I hope this didn't come off as too preachy. I'm not here to proselytize. None of this is meant to be a pitch for men to man up, put yourself out there, or get back in the saddle. As I said, I think working on yourself and figuring out your own priorities in life is of primary importance. But just don't close yourself off completely from other possibilities. So let me know in the comments if you think I've lost the plot with this video. If you like what you heard, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, or consider throwing me $1 on Patreon. See you next time.